Shout out, folks. It's Bob the Old Rucker here. Redbeard and I and the rest of the Shout Out team pray you are having an outstanding American day. Hey, everything you want to know about our mission or purpose is at shoutoutfromthepit.com. So, we're always looking for guests and topics. If you have suggestions for topics or would like to be a guest, hit us up at team@shoutoutfromthepit.com. Or use the contact form on shoutoutfromthepit.com. All right, so I've given a shout out before to the Till Valhalla Project for their awesome outreach to first responders, vets, and their families. They've got amazing apparel right now for the 9/11 memorial. So, you don't want to miss this. So check out tillvalhallaproject.com and tell them the old Rucker with Shout Out sent you. Nope, they've never heard of us, but thanks to you, they just might. And check out the show notes for events happening near you. Send us events happening in your area, and we'll share them on the show. And you never know, the tribe likes to travel. Just saying. Whoa, and don't forget to check out AANVR.org. That's Alcoholics Anonymous in virtualreality.org. AANVR.org. What an awesome recovery resource to add to your tool bag. I'm still working to get one of the creators as a guest on the show. And speaking of guests, what a lineup we have starting this week with tribal brother Pat sharing his... I am on a roll today. Sharing his awesome recovery journey, followed next week by part duo in the sponsorship series. And then Team Jeremy is back hosting a show about being a caretaker. Believe the old Rucker, you don't want to miss these episodes or any of our episodes. So be sure to sign up at shoutoutfromthepit.com, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you listen to the show. Like, join, and share the hope and inspiration with the masses. You'll get Diane's missives full of awesome tools and encouragement, regular insights from the Shout Out team, and episodes designed to edutain as you trudge the road to happy destiny. And as always, it's for free and for fun. And please, I've been schooled when you like, share, join, follow, comment, or whatever. It helps give the show street creds and moves up in your streaming service so other folks learn about the podcast. Side note, we may have struck a nerve with your streaming service with some of the episodes. If you notice a missing episode, no worries. It's on our website at, you guessed it, shoutoutfromthepit.com. So, humble reminder, these raw and uncensored Recovery Overcomer episodes are about real people with real struggles and real solutions. And now, on with the show, episode 82. Can you believe it? We're up to episode 82. We got 82 episodes. Who would have ever guessed? Shut up, Bob. Yeah, okay, apologies. Launching in 3, 2. All right. Man, the gang's all here. This is cool. Hey, shout out, folks. It's Bob the Old Rucker coming at you raw and uncensored. And as always, only God knows what's going to happen on this show. Welcome to Shout Out from the Pit, where the host needs serious therapy and the guests are awesome. I'm the host, and Redbeard, my friend, partner, and producer, and is here today, is the brains behind the scenes. Man, Redbeard, is so good to see you.
Same.
Oh, gosh, you can't. Well, we have, this is our 83rd episode, and you've probably been on 5. I'm guessing. I don't know. For a partner, we want to hear more of you. I know the audience does. So anyway, moving right along. Sorry. So joining us today are Jeremy, Tony, Redbeard, and our featured guest, Pat. Give a shout out, folks.
Hey, guys.
What's up, everybody?
That mic over there is in and out. So we'll find out when you talk if it works or not. Otherwise, you might have to stretch over to this one there, Jeremy.
I don't need to.
All right. Well, I'm a little giddy today, guys. And the reason I am is because this is our 83rd episode, and the launch episode was with Redbeard, Tony. I love you, Tay Tony, and Pat and myself. And this is the first time, I think, since that launch episode that we've all been together. And today, of course, joining us. Oh, I didn't include Ralph. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't expect it. Brother Ralph's here. You know, Ralph is our infamous it's for free and for fun guy. So this is cool. I'm really I'm excited today, guys. So I'm going to try and be a little more professional, but I can't guarantee that. But on that note, though, especially to you, Tony, and Pat, you guys have been great supporters of the show and have been on quite a few episodes, man. So, I mean, we're still alive today because of, your guys' involvement with us from the beginning. So thanks. And then, of course, Jeremy's come along, has hosted a few shows and is going to be hosting some shows here in the future. So, I mean, it's just, it just warms my heart that we've gone this far. And we've got some great episodes in the lineup. So I'm belaboring all this, but I just want to say thanks. I'm sorry, man. It's really good. And of course on the set is Danny. Danny's with us. He's been having some challenges these days, but he's right here on the set with us. All right, so let's just launch into this because today's show really is, Pat sharing his experience, strength, and hope with the audience. And, he's got a great message. And I'm excited that it's been really hard to nail you down because of your career and some of the things that you're absolutely involved in. I mean, you are running. And if it matters to the audience, Pat is a successful man and he's single.
Yes, very single. Very, very single. Don't remind me, Bob.
I mean, it's no secret. My wife is constant like, Pat, he's going to make such a great husband and a great father. And, my wife adores you. So, I guess you're like another son to her. All right. So, Pat, what is keeping you busy with life today?
With life today? Well, as you said, about 9 months ago, I got to change careers per se, jobs.
Yeah.
After 13 years. And before that, about 7 years together, doing what I loved. I loved to be around sports and I loved the outdoors and I loved, getting to see the kids, grow.
Yeah.
And, it was a tough decision when that all came down, but for my longevity, I knew that, it was time, and I fully believe that God, presented all that and made it all happen.
Yeah.
Everything all fit, as far as the interviews, and I felt comfortable with the people there, and so everything just kind of fell into place, and I knew, this is probably the road I need to go down. In the past, I didn't always get them clues. I didn't always see, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, and I fully believe that this was. When you start doing the right things, good things happen. And I think this was one of the rewards after, several years of putting the next step forward. And so I still continue to do the things that got me to this point. And I know I will keep on getting rewarded for that. I don't know what it's going to be. For years and years and years, I've talked to God about, giving me something, let me, give me the Notre Dame, grounds crew job. Give me, let me get back up to Fayetteville. I always wanted something big, and I guess he decided, no, we're going to take you away from that,
Well, the funny thing is, we're an anonymous show, but we can't even say what you do because it would totally break your anonymity. Sure. So, but when you say something big, it's like, our God gave you something big, all right. It was just unexpectedly out of the field you were in. Sure. And all of us sitting here today know it's a miracle and know it's amazing that not only, you know, that you were a prospect for that position, but you actually got it.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing. That is amazing to see the fruits of sobriety and how, you know, it isn't just that you lead a sober life. Really, Pat, it isn't just that. I think you're rewarded because of your heart and all the things that you're involved in, you know, giving it back. You know, we can't survive on an empty cup, and your cup is full, man.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it is.
So, you know, like all shows, you know, give us a snapshot of Pat's growing up, man. Tell us, you know, what it was like.
What it was like. So I start off everything saying, you know, my story is, I don't have this crazy story, you know. I drank, you know, at the time it was the thing to do. And then I drank and I started getting in trouble, and it just progressed. But growing up, you know, I had two loving parents that absolutely did everything in their power to give me and my sister a great home, a great growing up. They grew up poor. My dad was pretty successful in what he did, and they provided, you know. I always kind of joke, you know, some might call it being spoiled, but I called it, you know, my dad giving to me what he didn't have, you know. But loving, good God, they loved their baby boy. They loved their daughter, you know, and they let me be a boy. You know, I was outdoors every chance I could get, you know. I was rambunctious. I was crazy. You know, I was the typical little boy.
Well, you were adventurous. I wouldn't call it crazy.
Okay. Well, I would call it crazy because when I look back at that time, and I see it now, I've always wanted to be something that I wasn't, you know, and that started from an early age, whether it was playing basketball, and we do this as kids, and, you know, I didn't want to be Pat. You know, I wanted to be Michael Jordan. I wanted to be, you know, whoever the star was at that point. I wanted to be that. You know, I didn't necessarily feel comfortable in my skin growing up. You know, my sister did the academics, so, you know, she was good at that. And I was decent at sports, but I wasn't, you know, I'm not the best on the team. But I always, you know, I always wanted to be that guy. And I think that, you know, going through elementary and then getting to middle school and high school, you know, when you have those feelings, you start to doubt yourself on things, and you try to do more than what you really probably should, you know. I wanted to fit in. You know, but as far as childhood, man, my parents are great parents. You know, they raised a good son to a certain point. You know, they did their job, and then I kind of took it in a different direction. You know,
when did I mean? So let's look at adolescent years, growing up into high school. So is the word rebellious okay to use?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. So when do you feel like you started showing some rebellion?
So, of course, I was raised in church. We were in the Baptist church, you know, Wednesday nights, Sunday morning, Sunday nights, and any other time that the damn place was open, you know. And I loved church. That was the thing I did up to a certain point, you know. And I thank my parents for getting me involved in, you know, that was their job. That was my dad's job, to put, you know, his family into the church, and that's what he did. But rebellious, absolutely, man. From an early age, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, how I wanted to do it, with who I wanted to do it, and all this. That was early on. And my parents, they raised what I still feel like my sister she's damn near perfect. She is damn near perfect.
Somebody's got to be,
man, they had that, so I could kind of be the black sheep, and I didn't mind it. I wanted to experience life.
Well, when you say rebellious, give us an earliest memory, maybe an earliest memory of being rebellious, and what were the consequences of it, if any?
Man, good question, Bob. I don't know. I think, basically, I backtalked my mom, and that it's not that big of a deal. I don't know. That's kind of putting you on the spot, Bob.
Okay. Well, I mean,
let's
did you come
back
home
to that? Because,
Okay.
My parents, so, to get everything out in the open, my parents didn't drink. I didn't know anybody that drank, in my immediate family. My sister really didn't start drinking until college, and by then, I was years into it,
And is she the older?
She's older. Yeah. She's 3 years older than me. But rebel, staying out past curfew, the little things, not going to school,
You skipped school?
Absolutely. To go fishing or something like that.
Okay, well, there's a good reason there. Yeah. That's a good reason.
We had a group of guys that, man, we like to party, man. We like to get down, and it became, the every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then, as you get into closer to graduation and this and that, it became a daily thing. Man, we didn't want to be at school.
No.
What the hell is school teaching me?
No, right?
I'm learning
today especially.
I'm learning in the real world.
Yeah.
Early on, my parents instilled a work ethic, and from the time I could start working, I worked. Now it wasn't. I worked at Party Land. I made balloons and delivered balloons. That was my first job. And I was damn good at it.
You know what? I didn't know that, and I would never suspected you worked at Party Land.
Yeah. I think they tried at one point, get me dressed up as a mascot. I'm like, no, I ain't doing that shit. No, thank you.
Did you ever get into the helium?
Where you talk funny and stuff?
Yeah.
All the damn time.
That's the only reason I'd want to work at Party Land.
So, yeah. But that was my first job. But, in all my jobs, I work hard. I get emotionally involved in the job. It becomes something that probably is on the verge of insanity, in thinking about things. In some ways, it's crazy, but in some ways, I think at a certain point, it actually saved me, falling back into something that I truly cared about, especially early on. And, when I was working at the college that I worked at and this and that, because I got in a low place, and that was something that I could do to get me out of where I was,
it's funny. I was just thinking as you're saying that, I've done a lot of interviews with folks, and we collectively know a lot of people, folks that get into their drinking. They start coming up with excuses why not to go to work or missing work or just not having a job at all. I don't think in all the thousands of chats that we've had over the years that you were ever in that category.
No, I like to be at work. I may not be 100%, but I always looked at it. My 60-70% is better than anything you got.
Yeah, so you have a great work ethic. And do you know the number one pickup line? for ladies?
Oh, shit, I don't know.
Oh, I have a job.
Oh, yes. I guess.
Did I mention that Pat's single?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Keep on going, Bob.
So high school, you shared with us what high school was like. So what was your ambition when you got out of high school?
Well, so I didn't have ambition out of high school. After football season, my senior year, I lost it. I didn't have nothing. I had no drive. I didn't have nothing to show up for. And, I got to thinking, and, I say this, and I do wholeheartedly believe it. I did not want to waste my dad's money on going to college. I did not, because I knew I ain't going to school. It would be, 13th, 14th grade per se, and trying to find the party on the weekends. And, man, my senior year, I started talking to this recruiter, and the thought of the military didn't really come across, because my grandfather, who I knew nothing about, was the only one in the immediate family that served.
What was he in?
The Navy.
Okay.
So he was in the Navy, and that's all I really know, because my dad didn't talk about it. He died at an early age in my dad's life. Okay. So, I don't. So the military, it was a foreign thing. Of course, you watch the movies and I don't want to do that. And at the time, I was looking at it and I think maybe my father, I don't want to put words in his mouth, he was kind of against it, but then I think he probably thought, man, maybe he'll grow up. Maybe he'll, come out of his, funk of not liking, authority and not respecting authority, and yeah. I don't know if I ever thought about that or anything like that, but so anyways, I get to graduation, and it's like, well, shit, what am I going to do? And I decided, hey, I'm going to join the Marine Corps, and out of left field, the recruiter comes by and he's like, I sign in front of my parents, don't do the MEPS thing, that comes later. But I mean, all intents and purposes, yeah, I'm going. But there's a catch. I don't want to go yet. I don't want to go yet. I want to get my senior high school year, after graduation. I want to have that to do whatever what I want to do. And I did, and I started running around guys that probably weren't the best in the world to run around with. And trouble started happening, and I'm not going to talk about that. But the key to the thing is in January after I graduated, I went to boot camp, and thank God,
Pat, I'm just curious. You had no military influence in your life, and out of the four major services, you chose one of the ones that you see the billboards, the few, the proud, the lonely. Yeah, I'm kidding, but you did.
No, it's true.
You jumped in both feet into the Marine Corps with no influence. Why the Marines and not one of the other services?
Again,
I'm
man,
just curious.
I always had that. I'm better. I want to be the best. I want to, whatever the toughest is, let's go. Not knowing if I could do it or not, and really not having, I doubted myself on a lot of things, still do today. That's one of those things that I have to work through on a daily basis when I make decisions as a leader and as a manager. It happened from early on, but the Marine Corps, the way the recruiter presented himself, the uniform, everything that I could find on the Marine Corps is like, this is the top of the top. I knew I'd never be special forces or anything like that. I'm not that good, but I could be a Marine.
Well, anybody that joins the Marine, according to my research, is everybody's an 0311. Sure. Everybody's an infantryman.
Everybody's a rifleman.
That's the only service that really preaches that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, that presented You know, at the time when I went in, January of 2001, there's absolutely nothing going on. Nothing going on in the world. So, hey, here's an opportunity. I can get by 4 years and then I can pay for college.
Okay.
You know, I can do that.
Uh-huh.
You know,
I get it.
So, we get to boot camp, and you know, me thinking I'm this stud, you know, of a recruit, get slapped in the face real quick with reality. You know, I am not a stud. I mean, we had guys from New York that were chiseled Greek gods, you know, these 6'2", 215 pounds, just studs.
And you loved to run, didn't you?
No, absolutely not. The one thing Marines do well, you know, is run, and I did not.
See, you got to remember something, Bob. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Pat thought he was going to be a dragon slayer because the Marine Corps had the ad and the commercial.
Oh, I remember those ads.
Slaying the dragon.
That's right.
And so he didn't think there was going to be any running. He just thought it was going to be swinging a sword, killing a dragon.
That's right. I remember those ads.
No, you know, running and me never have mixed, you know. I was that 4 second. A football play generally lasts 4 seconds, 4 to 7 seconds. You give it your all for 4 to 7 seconds. You get a minute or two off, then you do it again.
Right.
Running is consistent.
I never thought of that. That's a good point.
And, you know, I'm pretty good that 4 to 7 seconds. That's what she said. I know. That's
God.
You know, whatever. So I get to boot camp, and, you know, the dose of reality hits you right off the bat. And it's like, oh, shoot, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
But I had this, I'm not going to give up. You know, I wanted to do this. I made my bed. Let's go. You know, let's go. And, you know, after a certain time in Marine Corps boot camp, and, you know, unless you've been there, you may understand it, but there's a certain point where you get to, and it's like, oh, this is helping me. Everything we're doing is going to help me down the road. And then it becomes fun. And it's like, you know, the drill instructors will see the light in everybody's, you know, and when you finally get that, it's like they're not going to mess with you as much because, okay, you've kind of been indoctrinated or brainwashed or whatever you want to call it. And once that happens, boot camp just becomes fun. And it's like, oh, let's have a good time with this. And then you start having a good time. So you get through boot camp, and you do the School of Infantry Pogue edition, person other than grunt. You did do that little school. And then I got comm school in 29 Palms, California, which is the asshole of America, you know. But it's a Marine Corps base that the Army said, we don't want it no more. Here you go, Marines, you know, make the best out of this. And that's where we were. And it ended up being, you know, one of those places that we traveled to a lot for training when we wasn't deployed.
Pat, it's funny you should say that because one of my assignments, I had to go out and do some evaluations, and they said, you're going to go to California. And I was like, yeah. I'm assuming everything is like, you know, San Diego, because it's not far.
Right.
Wow, what a eye opener when I got to the Marine training. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is, you would not know you're in California. Yeah. God bless you. Yeah. God blessing you. Yeah.
So, throughout high school, we drank, and we drank, and we drank, and we drank, you know, and, you know, when you get to boot camp, you're not going to drink for 13 weeks. And I get back home from boot camp and have a big party, and my guys that I was running around with in high school, they had me some Corona. I like Corona at that point, you know, put a lime in it, and that 6-pack's going to do me good, you know. Drank that, the first night back, and didn't really drink much after that because I knew I needed to stay in kind of sort of shape because I sucked anyway. So if I got out of shape, things were going to really suck. Anyways, you go through different your School of Infantry school, and then I went to comm school. And up to that point, things were going well. Well, I get to comm school, and at that point in your Marine Corps career, they start letting you have a little bit more freedom. Weekends are free, and there's Palm Springs right down the road from 29 Palms, and you get with the guys that are. Man, they're fun guys. They come to the Marine Corps for some damn reason. It's not the right reasons, but I wanted to hang out with those guys. I wanted to have fun. So you start getting in trouble. And I had my first sort of trouble deal. The whole platoon had the trouble, but we were supposed to pull duty on a Saturday night, and nobody showed up from the whole platoon. The whole platoon. And
was that just a lack of messaging or what?
That was us saying we want to party more than anything else.
Wow, that's brave. It
was very brave because we had a gunny, and I still remember to this day, this is where I get the significant emotional experience. He said, boys, we're going to have a significant emotional experience. And I'm like, man, that is creative. I like that. But I knew what he meant. And from then on, we didn't have anything. We pulled duty for the next 4 weeks. It never stopped. 4 hours after 4 hours. If we weren't in school, 4 hours after 4 hours sucked. So comm school sucked. I was ready to get the hell out of 29 Palms. I get done around the 4th of July. I get to come back home. 30 days on recruiter's assistance, and I get kind of nasty, what we called it in the Marine Corps. I didn't get up and run, and, I'm eating whatever I want to eat, and I get back around my friends and this and that and start drinking pretty heavily. I could, my parents were like, why are you staying out all night, this and that? You're supposed to be at the recruiter's office. And anyways, I get nasty. I get back into civilian mode, right off the bat, But again, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, with who I wanted to do it. And it didn't matter, at that point, what was going on. Didn't ever get in trouble with, I got chewed out by Master Guns, who was the Dallas Fort Worth recruiter boss. He just happened to be up here and, knew I was on recruiter's assistance and, didn't formally get in trouble, but had to stand before him. And
well, their expectations are you're going to bring in all your high school buddies and what have you.
Yeah. And at that point, I didn't, nobody younger than me that I knew was man enough to be a fucking Marine, Well,
let's just call it as it is.
I will. I did. I was like, there is not a person in that high school that deserves to be a Marine. I felt that way, because I wanted to, keep my core, the best.
Sure, but you were getting lazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Double standard.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. That don't, So, anyways, I get to my unit in August of 2001, and I remember checking in, and it's on a Thursday evening. And they put me straight on duty. That's what they do because my unit happened to be out in the field training. Normal training, nothing big. They'll be back Friday evening or whatever. And I remember going to sleep, getting up for duty and doing like the 12 to 8, midnight to 8. Finally got a room, and I was getting ready to go and getting in the room, undressing everything, and this window had this window opened, and this guy's climbing through the window. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And he climbs through the window and he's like, "You're the new guy." And that's how he talked, "You're the new guy." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the new guy." He's like, "You like to drink?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I like to drink." "Well, let's have a beer, boy." Okay. This guy was maybe 3 years older than me, but you look up to those guys, it's like, he's a Lance Corporal. Well, I'm just a PFC at this point. So you're going to do what the Lance Corporal says,
Right.
But right off the bat, I was like, man, I found my people. They like to drink, right off the bat, man, I knew. Here we go, And I developed some relationships over the years with guys, but it was based around drinking.
Yeah.
It was based around drinking and our love for sports. We didn't really care about playing Marine or anything like that. The Marine became a 12-hour job, or however long the day was, but it wasn't. We were working,
Mm-hmm. Well, the Marine life, as you knew, as you said, you reported in August 2001. Right. So the Marines that you knew at that time was about to change.
It was about to change, and it changed. It changed the next month. September 11th happened, and everybody that was in the military can tell you where they were when they were, what they were doing and everything that was going on, because it changed. It changed everybody's path. And I truly feel that.
Well, it's funny because there's 5 of us in here that were in the military at that time. Yeah. We can all go, yeah. Yep.
So, September 11th happened, and we were already scheduled to deploy in January 2002. Well, they moved up the deployment to December, and so we get on a naval ship heading towards wherever we're heading. We didn't really know and didn't really care. We knew it was going to take a while to get to wherever we're going because everything's like 2 weeks. From San Diego to Hawaii, it's 2 weeks. From Hawaii to wherever, it's 2 weeks. So we know it's going to be a while. We're not getting dropped in,
Right.
We're artillery. So we ain't, if we ain't going to, things ain't just going to happen overnight. Anyways, so things happen. We get to our theater and they didn't need us, and that was a letdown because you build yourself up. You build yourself up and you build yourself up. You're ready, but what happened was, then it became the booze cruise everybody talks about. We get to see the world as the Marines said I would get to do. Hell yeah, this is what I signed up for. I don't have to go to war. There was a chance, but, whatever. We avoided that, and I got to see places like Thailand and Singapore and Qatar and Bahrain, all these places that you don't even know exist, Australia. And
now each one of these places that you went to, your first goal was to find a church.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We there was some crazy things. So our group got stuck at sea for 100-something days in a row. And our first stop was in Thailand, Phuket Beach, Thailand. And there was some crazy things that happened. And I won't go into that. It didn't happen. We did have a sergeant, stand in the middle of the road with a samurai sword, trying to cut people, as they're going by on their little motorcycles. And anyways, it got worse because they kept us locked up in a cage.
Oh my. Yeah.
I think since then they've rewrote, how many days they can keep people out without seeing, God bless the submariners. I don't know how they do it 6 months at a time, but so there was some crazy things that happened, but ultimately, man, we got to get back into the swing of things of what I like to do. And, there wasn't really work on the ship, it was kind of a downtime. And we get back and they kind of leave us alone, we get back and not really training or doing anything like that. So we're all getting pretty nasty, so to say. And drinking becomes this thing that we do again and again and again and again. And but somewhere in the next month or two, we start hearing this place called Iraq. We start hearing the talk like the U.S. is about to get busy, and once again, you start preparing yourself for that. And we don't know how to prepare. We don't have any Vietnam veterans. We have one Gulf War veteran, and he pretty worthless, I can say it now. It's been years, so, and I didn't mention no names. So,
well, not to mention that war was over in 3 days.
3 days. Yeah. So,
what do you learn from that?
I don't know, but you get to wear the, combat action ribbon.
Yeah, sure.
So, anyways, you start preparing, and we left we left the day after the Super Bowl. And me and Jeremy discussed this.
Oh, you guys were both out there at the same time. Yeah. Oh, that's right.
We got on a plane, and it took 27 hours or something like that, and we ended up in Kuwait. And, that was in February, I believe. And then March 22nd. 21st, 22nd, we started
before my anniversary.
Yeah.
21st.
Yeah. We started shooting rounds, I believe, on the 20th.
Stuff got real.
I think we started shooting rounds, and stuff started getting real. I've still got a picture, no U.S. personnel passed this line. That's what Iraq had posted on some of their stuff. Like, okay, that's going to stop us.
That's funny. That's funny. That's like a no gun zone, right? Free gun zone or something. How ridiculous is that?
So, that just the comedy of, what you don't know what you got to find something funny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we start shooting rounds, downrange, and it's like, oh shit, this gets real quick, because on the other side, it's no longer just a training exercise. Like, here we go, and, man, we roll, and, we stop every once in a while, but man, the U.S. military is a awesome force. About the only thing that's going to stop it is supply and the weather, and that's what ended up stopping us was supply and the weather. We had the sandstorms and this and that.
I remember those.
And we had the supply lines. We were going so fast they couldn't keep up with us, but you get to experience war, and that's a different experience. And when you're 21 years old at that point, that's a lot to consume. Yeah. And you get done with that, and you get put back on the same ship that you was on a year before, so it's same personnel, a lot of same personnel. You get to catch up, and your first stop is in Australia, and all you want to do is just go numb.
Well, you're a different person now.
You're a
too.
different person. You just want to go numb.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely, everybody was a man, and men don't talk about shit.
That's right.
And I never did, because I didn't want to be known as that guy that, he's got feelings, but I had a good buddy, still have a good buddy. We hadn't talked in years, but we would conversate, but it never got to the emotional level, of everything. Hey man, how are you doing? That kind of question. But it would be like, just kind of reminiscing and stuff like that, and you keep on going down them dark holes and stuff like that. And man, all you want to do is go numb. You don't want to remember. And I'm not here saying, my experience was, what some experienced later, but it was my experience. And I do think, it does play somewhere in my whole drinking career, but we get back and we get back from that, and really they leave us the hell alone. they just, we got to show up to formation and we might go do our job for an hour or two, but it's kind of laissez-faire. We've been to war. We're combat veterans at this point. We're going to leave you alone. And, what that did was just give us the fuel to stay numb, and I stayed numb the rest. I had a pretty successful Marine Corps stint, 4 years. I never got in trouble to the point where, alcohol at that point didn't get me in trouble.
Right.
I got out, I'm a combat veteran. The world is my oyster. What do I want to do? Well, I wanted to be a state policeman. I thought military did me pretty well. I was, pretty good, and maybe the standards ain't quite as high, probably wrong on that, Yes, studs. I see them every day.
That's right. That's right.
I see them every day, but I want to be the biggest and the best, and the Arkansas State Troopers, next to the federal guys, they were the biggest and the best, and so I went down that course, and I went through all the stuff you got to go through, and I got a ship date of August of 2005, maybe 6, starting to lose track of time. I get out in November of 2000. Yeah, so 2005, and I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? Again, I was not a good planner. Now I like to plan things. I'm anal about planning stuff, but
and you are. I can attest to that.
I'm sorry.
I love it. I love it. No, that's me.
But at that point, I was not a planner. I don't know where that came from. I think it's the control thing that always comes back around. I got to be in control, so I'm going to plan it, how I want it, with who I want it, where I want it, blah, blah, blah. But what am I going to do? And I was like, well, let me start this college thing, and my first semester in college, I got all A's, I'm like, wow, I can do this shit, but I got to pick my own schedule. So I was going to school in the afternoons, partying all night, sleeping all day until about 2:00, going to school, every day. I was doing what I wanted, and I got back into this habit of hanging around the same guys that, and they're great guys. All of them are been successful now in their careers. But at the time, man, we wanted to party and girls, didn't have anything else on our mind. And the two I ended up moving in with, they had a house, and his parents owned the house. And so we were untouchable. And they both worked for Miller Lite.
Oh, shoot.
So bad combination, boys. We were the party house, and it was a pretty good time. I kind of washed the Marine Corps off of me, and we had some good times, and school's going on and this and that, and we decided in March to go on a spring break. Well, I never had a spring break, up to that point per se, where I could drink and have fun legally, call it a spring break,
Yeah.
And we go to Colorado, and me and one of the guys one night decided that Pagosa shut down at like 8:00 every night. Well, we didn't want to just sit at the house.
Nah.
We wanted to go.
That's right.
And Durango's an hour and a half away, and Durango has 3 colleges.
Yeah, Durango.
Here we go, boys.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to Durango and we have a good time, and again, that control factor takes over, and it's like, I will drive. I will be the one to drive home. I'm going to drive home because I didn't drink as much, and so I get it behind the wheel, and you know what happens next, man. I'm at the last light to get out of Durango, and the light turns green, and I didn't notice the cop behind me. You know, light turns green and I get going and there's the blue lights. I'm like, gosh, dang it. You know, I had a good run. I had a real good run on that, you know. Everybody around me, you know, they'd already had their DWIs and this and that. Well, Pat, you know, gets his first. And in the jail that night, I was like, well, I just lost the state trooper. You know, I knew it. So my dreams and goals were shattered. You know, what the hell am I going to do now? You know, so there's the first instance that, man, maybe this drinking thing may be affecting, you know, may be wise for you to slow down, but I didn't slow down, you know. I'm a survivor, you know, so I get beat down on that. And here's the deal is the consequences weren't that bad other than the state trooper, you know. I didn't serve no jail time. I paid like $600. Colorado's their laws were not strict at all. You know, had to do a couple hours of community service. You know, it wasn't bad. So I didn't feel those consequences other than the state trooper. Well, I've got my life ahead of me. So maybe years down the road, that might come back. You know,
Sure.
So I continue in school, and man, I do pretty good in school. Been the same buddy. This is a recurring deal. So same buddy. We decide one day to move to Fayetteville, Arkansas. You know, we want to go and party with the college kids up there. And
Pat, were you still in school at that time?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was still in school, but I was going to have to transfer to another community college. You know, to continue. I couldn't get into Fayetteville at that point because I'd only had 2 semesters, I think, you know, of school.
Okay.
Done well in those 2 semesters, but nothing. We go up there and, you know, the partying continues. I have to get a real job to support, you know, the money from the VA. I had to cut my schooling down because had to cut the schooling down because, you know, at that point the drinking was starting to get bad, and, you know, I'm drinking a lot at that point, and it just wasn't feasible to go to school all the time, you know. So I meet a girl up there, and she's awesome. She's working on her master's degree. Got a lot of things going for her, you know, and she ends up, you know, graduating and moving to Little Rock, and she gets a job with the Agri service down here, and I moved back home, trying to get everything together. Moved back home, and it's, you know, we don't move in together. I moved back into my parents' house, and, you know, that never is good when you got a son that wants to do what he wants to do and parents that don't want him to do what he's doing, you know. So, you know, life happens, and she's taking courses. She's really wanting to get into vet school down at LSU. And at that point, you know, I was about to finish up at Pulaski Tech, and I really wanted to go to Fayetteville, you know. Well, she breaks my heart, you know, the sad story of Pat, and get his heart broken. And I get out one night and I get another DWI. So 2 in 2 years, you know. Well, since that one is in Colorado, this one down in Little Rock ain't going to hurt me. And it didn't, you know, it didn't stop the momentum of anything. You know, do your community service, go to a couple alcohol classes, maybe try this thing. They have this program called AA. You might want to go to that. Nah, fuck that.
Nah, you ain't doing that.
So,
that's for sissies.
you know, we end up, you know, she broke up with me, but we tried to kind of stay together. We knew we were tied together, you know, some way, somehow. You know, she didn't have a lot of friends down here until she moved, you know, and So we tried, we stayed together. She moved to Baton Rouge, and I decided I wanted to move back to Fayetteville because I was in my junior year. I was ready to start my junior year. I wanted to graduate from the University of Arkansas and then pursue some stuff up there. And, all this time, man, I'm getting more isolated, the bar scene never really, I enjoyed it sometimes and I didn't others, but 9 times out of 10, man, I'd much rather sit at the house and drink, because there I couldn't get in trouble, but I moved to Fayetteville, not knowing a soul, not knowing a thing. And I get up there and I meet some youngsters. I call them youngsters. I start hanging out with them, partying with them. Well, I lose a scholarship in my first semester up there. I get this land grant scholarship, it's one of the highest scholarships you can get in the Bumpers College up there. And I lose it in the first semester. Man, my grades are terrible. And, my professor, who I really don't know, he was like, man, Pat, what's going on with you? You came in here and you were cheery and, everything was happy-go-lucky. And now you show up sometimes, you don't others. And I don't know, I was isolated at that point, and all I was doing was drinking. Man, I didn't study. I don't know how I made it through college, but they told me, you could get 30% D's, and I picked out the classes that I could get D's in, and I didn't struggle in my main classes. I didn't. It's what I wanted to do. And when I want to do something, man, I put my heart into it. Same friend that I've got the 2 DWIs with, he in a roundabout way, he comes up and we're out at a bar one night, out at bar watching a band, and I get my 3rd DWI.
Oh my!
So 3 DWIs, 4 years, whatever it was, 6 years. Again, that one didn't hurt me at that point. It didn't hurt at that time, but. So, again, I get a job, man, I'm looking for a job. And
did you actually finish school?
I did.
Okay.
I did, but that's later. This is 2009.
Okay.
2009, I met a guy that knew a guy, that was the head at the over sports turf for the athletic department. And I went and this was a Friday afternoon. He was like, can you be here tomorrow morning? I was like, absolutely. Here we go. I'm going to be around sports, and I get stuck at Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Man, I am in high cotton. I am walking the fields of legends, in my mind. And, man, I'm just as happy as I could be. But this deal that I'm in, man, it's a good old boy deal where, you get off, you're still at work, but you're supposed to get off at 5:00. Well, we're not going home until midnight because we got to paint the field and this and that. So we don't care if you chug, a little bit here and there, just don't get crazy with it, and don't let nobody see, have it in a cup, no big deal, So I ultimately find my kind of people again, man. We work hard, but we play hard. And, my boss at the time, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I didn't see it at that point, but, there was some tendencies that he had. And, so it probably wasn't the best to be around those individuals, especially trying to do what I was trying to do. But they taught me a lot and everything. So I end up graduating, and here's where the DWI comes back to hurt me. I applied for a position, and it would have been a big position. I would have had my own fields up there. And he said, Pat, I can't give you those because you can't drive a vehicle. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, that DWI you got back in whatever month it was is showing up, and the state can't, and I got pissed, man. I was highly pissed. It's like, I'll give you this other position, but it's going to be 4 to 5 years before we can even consider you to, be a supervisor. I'm like, man, I'm better than my supervisor right now. I've got a college education. I'm one of the only ones on the crew with a college education, and y'all ain't going to reward me. Y'all ain't going to fuck y'all, I got pissed.
Yeah.
And ultimately started looking for another job at that point, and I found out that the same guy that helped me get the job at the U of A knew a guy down at Mississippi State. And I'm like, I could go to Mississippi State, Starkville ain't too bad of a place, and I interviewed for a job down there, and I get it. Like, hell yeah, things are going my way again, Again, the DWIs are not hurting me monetarily. They're not hurting me taking my license and this and that. Everything is just, here you go, okay, I get down to Starkville, and it's kind of like when I first moved up to Fayetteville to go to school. I didn't know anybody, just the guys I worked with, and other than the boss and the assistant boss, all of them were college kids. And I'm like, man, I get to hang out with college kids again and show them how real Arkansans, our real drinkers do it, And I go out one night, and I'm 3 months into my job, and I drive down the wrong road. It's never good to drive past a police station at shift change with your lights off. Never good. Never good.
Oh, no.
Yes.
We get there.
Okay.
So you didn't have a license. How did you get to Mississippi?
No, I had a license.
You had a license.
Nothing ever came back on me.
So you never lost your license. Nothing.
Never had a blow and go. Never lost a license over a DWI. It's the strangest damn thing. And they can't get me now, so I'm good. It can't come back on me. Statute of limitations. So everything. When I moved down to Mississippi, I was a new man.
Okay, so a lot of that makes sense now.
Yeah, I was a new man. Okay. The problem was I took myself with me. And wherever I go, I tend to screw things up. I get in the vehicle at midnight and shift change in Starkville Police Department, and all they have to do is pull out and pull me over right there. So I had no clue where I was going. I called my boss. The only number I really had in my phone was my boss, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to jail. Can you come bail me out?" He was like, "Hey, whoops." So, of course he knows, the director of the department knows when I get in the next morning.
Oh man, awkward.
He's like, we're going to have to suspend you, and depending on, which way they want to go with you're probably going to lose your job.
Okay.
So it was determined, and I applaud the guy because I think he really stood up for me. This guy's from Arkansas. He's 3 months into a job. Give him a second chance. He won't miss work. He's a good worker when he's here. This is just one of those things. So I didn't lose my job.
That's a miracle.
It is a miracle. And I think, if you look back at it, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Because if I would have lost my job and had to call my parents and say, man, I would have, there's no telling what I would have done, because at that point I was as low as I've been. Some things are starting to creep back in. Some thoughts and those little demons that come up every once in a while.
Yeah.
And, I was at the lowest point, but, as he told me, he was like, man, I gave you a second opportunity. Don't ever miss work. Don't call in sick. Don't, you got to be here when others are not. This is what we're giving you, and I did, man. For the next year and a half, I gave him everything I had.
Did you have to do like a Cody, a 49cc? How'd you get to work?
I actually, so there was two guys that were living together that worked on our crew, and one worked certain days and the other worked certain days, and they were nice enough to pick me up every morning.
Very cool.
Every morning. And man, I can't thank them guys enough. You know, I still talk to both of them. They're doing well in their career fields, and they were just the nicest guys. And they would even, you know, when they took me home in the afternoons, every afternoon we had to stop by the store because I had to have an 18-pack. You know, and they'd be like, man, don't you think you got some problem? You know, you're drinking a lot. And I'm like, man, I don't know what else to do. You know, I really don't. I'm sitting down here. I'm lonely. I don't know what else to do. Anyways, but I didn't let that, you know, the drinking at that point, man, you get into that phase of drinking where, you know, you can drink as much as you want and it doesn't really affect you. You know, I was in pretty good shape. I could recover pretty quick. And, you know, on most days I'd sweat it out by 10 o'clock in the morning anyways. So, there came a point that I was like, you know, so that DWI, I did lose my license. You know, my parents, that was a very, very lonely deal. You know, they came down, and when my truck drove away, I was like, shit, what am I going to do now? You know, I'm going to be walking everywhere, and, you know,
Bicycle.
Yeah, I did. It got stolen off my porch.
Oh, no.
Insult to injury, man.
You had a bicycle that got stolen off your porch?
So the guy, one of the guys that picked me up, one morning he couldn't pick me up. And he gave me one of his bicycles. And it got stolen off the porch.
Oh,
and I said,
Brad.
how much was that bicycle? And at the time, I didn't know how much bicycles were. It's like it was $500. It was a good, you know, bike. And I'm like, man, I ain't got $500. And like, you know, I'll pay you in gas money or something, you know. And anyways, it got stolen off. It's like, are you sure you wasn't in a drunken, you know,
Did you leave it somewhere?
I was like, man, I don't go anywhere.
Oh,
you know,
no.
I'd had enough of doing anything in Starkville. You know, I'm sitting at my house. I can't get in trouble in my house. You know, so I do that one, man, I had to do all these classes every Tuesdays and Thursdays for months. And they told me my license was going to be suspended for 2 years. I'm like, I'm going to have to sit in Starkville, Mississippi for 2 years. This is going to kill me, you know, 2 years until I can get my license back. About that 6 month mark, I had all the community service done. I had 120 something hours of community service that I had to do. I had all these alcohol classes, had to go to so many AA, you know, get the sheet signed, blah, blah, blah. I had that done. And I called driver control in Mississippi. And I said, you know, this is 6 months into it. I was like, I've completed everything. Where do I send all the paperwork and this and that? This is what they told me I needed to do. And she typed on her computer and she said, if you send me $100, I'll give you your license back. And I said, dude, what? Here we go. Okay. So I called my dad and, you know, they were in the court, you know, when the judge said 2 years and this and that. And like, you know, they drove my truck away, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I called him on a Friday and I said, Dad, I think I have an opportunity to get my license back. When can you come down? He's like, you think that's good? Don't you think that 2 years might do you some good? And like, Dad, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to die. You know, I'm to that point. I got to get the hell out of Starkville, Mississippi, you know. But I can't do it without, you know, being on my own, you know. It's like, okay, so the next week he comes down and we go, supposedly the license reinstated. We go to Helena, West Helena. That's the closest driver place that I could get my license back. Walk in, give him my $20 and walk out with a license. I'm like, holy shit, how did this happen? You know, once again, I don't know how I've become this lucky. You know, I sent a picture to my boss, down in Mississippi, and he was like, "You got to get a Mississippi license. I don't trust this Arkansas license."
What?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. He didn't know me. He didn't know if I'm, because everybody thought 2 years is 2 years.
Yeah,
the judge
sure.
said 2 years.
Okay.
So that was the next challenge. The next day, my dad, we drove all the way to Little Rock, get my truck. I drive all the way back, and the next day, the boss was like, "Go get a Mississippi license. If you get a Mississippi license, you're golden." And I walk in and I give him the Arkansas license. I said, "I need a Mississippi license." And the lady sits there and she's typing on the computer for a while, and she kind of looks up at me, typing on the computer and looking up at me. I'm like, "Man, what's going on?" She was like, "Okay, well, sit right there." And everything's just falling into place. I walk out of there with a Mississippi license, and it's game on. I am not even hiding it. I go to the office. I'm like, "Here's my license. I'm back, but I'm going to sit right here and find a new job. I'm done with this place.
Wow.
This place has been nothing but a heartache,
Gosh.
And of course, these guys are Mississippi guys, and they're just like, yeah, I probably left a bad taste in their mouth, and I've talked to both of them since then, and made my amends for the stupidness of Pat at that point in my life. Man, this story's taken a while, Bob.
I've never heard a lot of this before.
So
I know your story. I've seen you tell it, but you're sharing stuff that Pat. I don't think any of us in here probably ever heard some of this stuff.
I find a job up in Bentonville, and I was like, yeah, that'll get me back to Fayetteville in that area, with Bentonville Parks and Rec. And I do the application, get a phone call. I'm like, "Hey, I need to go interview for a job. It's on Friday. I'll stay up in Fayetteville, have a good time with all the people up there that I know." I get up there for the interview, and I get into the office, and they're like, "Pat, we know several of the people, that you have listed as references, and we've called them, and we know you're hard worker, and what you know, and but we also know that you did not put on your application that you had a DWI."
3 of them.
Well, I didn't care about the other one. Oh. I just cared about the last one.
Okay. Wait, did you have 3 or 4?
4.
4. Oh my gosh.
4. So I didn't get the Bentonville job, so I had to drive my ass back to Starkville, And then I got a call from a buddy, and he was like, "Man, there's a job open in Maumelle that I'm really," this was his words, "I'm thinking about, looking at." Man, I got on the Maumelle website and I filled it out.
He was looking at it for him.
He was looking at it for him. Pat's going to get it. Pat's ready to get the hell out of Starkville.
Are you telling me that Buddy's just half the word on this one?
Yes, absolutely. I had to think about that for a minute. Yeah. Bravo Foxtrot. Yeah. So, I had to think about it. Yes, I've been known to, screw some buddies over, but I interview with, in the application, I'm sure, I put everything, I'm putting my whole life story on the damn thing.
Yeah, you're honest about the 40 WIs.
Yes.
Oh, well, good for you.
If that's what's holding me back, I've got a license. That's all they said I needed. I've got a license, who cares what the other shit is,
Okay.
I interview, and, a week goes by, and I get a call, and, "Hey, we want you to," and I'm like, "Yes, I'm going home. And my thoughts the whole next week, like it happened fast. I got a call on a Friday. We had 6 games that weekend, and my boss basically said, "Work them 6 games, work the next week to Friday, and then you can go. You've done your time, we're done with you. Everything just worked out. And so that happened fast. My parents came down, and I moved back in with them, and for 7 months, I think, my first 7 months at that job, I lived with them. And, again, I fall back into hanging out with the same crowd, staying out all night. And, I was a supervisor at that point, but I really wasn't supervising anybody. I was just showing up, and that kind of lasted the next, I was there 13 years, the next 10 years, Maumelle was a roller coaster. And, I envisioned moving back here and getting the house, getting the girl, getting the family, white picket fence, all, fuzzy bunnies and rainbows. And it was, I met the girl, I got the house, she had the kids. I'm like, hell yeah, I can be a father type figure to them. And, for a while, man, we drank together. Everything was good. And then she realized how much I do drink, and work, they asked me to do a lot. And it was eating me alive. Why are they putting so much pressure on me and not the other guy? Why, just in my head about things. And, year after year after year after year, it was the same shit. I'm better than what this is. They ain't paying me enough. I had every reason to drink.
Yeah.
And I did. I drank a lot. And, life just, it got miserable, and it got miserable to the point where she was miserable. She left, and, I call it the year of death. The relationship was dead. My barber died. My dentist, quit work. He didn't die, but, it's kind of like a death. The guy that I saw for a doctor situation left, everything was just dying around me, and Pat was dying too. At that point, when that relationship, I didn't have, anything to really, I didn't have anything at that point. The friends stopped coming around at that point. So I decided, I really like her, let me show her, that I can change, and this is my first trip to a treatment type facility. And, I had it in my mind, like I hear in the program I'll work, they're going to teach me how to drink civilized, they're going to.
Wait, the rehab is going to teach you?
Yeah. I mean, this was new. This was all new to me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I had to detox first,
Okay.
But they're going to teach me how to drink.
Okay.
I don't want to quit drinking. That don't sound like fun, the rest of my life, man, that's all I know.
That's too long.
And, so I do that, and I get out, and the next 7 months, I didn't drink. I started a program, so I could say, I was doing something outside of treatment and this and that. I was going to an IOP. And
an IOP is
intensive outpatient. So I was going there instead of work, and then on Mondays and Thursdays, I was attending a meeting and, I was the guy in the back, didn't want you to know me. I certainly didn't want to know you because I'm not that guy, I'm just here. I'm just visiting. I'm just a visitor.
That's right. That's right.
I got, yeah,
that's right.
So for 7 months, man, I didn't have my solution, and I was miserable, but I was going to show her, man, I could change. And some ways I think I did change, but in other ways, man, I just became a big old butthole, I was not happy, and ultimately she finally chopped it, and, So right off the bat, and
Pat, you were sober and she left you?
if you want to call it sober, I mean,
I didn't know if you were not drinking.
I was not drinking,
okay.
But I don't know. You know, some tell me that being sober ain't all about, just not drinking.
Oh, it's like Ralph says, right? What do you get when you get what is that? A horse thief? How do you say that? Say it in the microphone there.
Oh, when you get a horse thief sober, what do you got? Sober horse thief.
Yeah. Okay. So you were a sober horse thief.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And
character defects were still there.
Yeah. Oh man, and they were showing. They were showing pretty good. And the biggest thing, that comes back is, after she cut it off, I got into another relationship pretty quick.
Okay.
And the girl ended up moving in, and cool. I'll just move on. But that one kind of turned out the same way, it went well for a change. We drank together, I started drinking again after she left and drank pretty heavily. I remember the day, it was in April. Arkansas was playing Vanderbilt in Nashville, and guess what? Pat was in Nashville to watch Arkansas play Vanderbilt, and I tried to drink as much as I could, and I drank every bit of it. I drank every bit of it. I was right back, where I was 7 months before. This disease it takes you right back real quick.
On that note, progressive. Were you drinking more, or just you just got right back into the saddle?
I just got right back into the saddle, and that weekend, that weekend was just the tell, and I come back from that and I'm like, I'm just going to drink, who cares? If people don't like me, they don't like me. I'm cool, and, I met this other girl. I know I'm backtracking a lot, but I met this other girl, and she moves in, and everything's going fine until it wasn't. September's a bad month for me. We can trace that back to a couple things. But September of 2020 comes around, and I'm bad again, and my bosses are like, you got to do something about this. You're putting us, in a bad position. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll go back to detox and start a treatment, So I go, and man, I get out this point, and I'm not going to do a program. I'm just going to wing it. Get out in like September 10th or so, somewhere around in there. And I'm going good, life. I got the clear head, going to the IOP every day instead of going to work, so I don't have that stress. Got the girl that's behind me, life's going good, and September 26th of 2020, my dad dies. And, my dad at that point, he had my back, I didn't have much else. I had the girl, but the girl was just something to kind of fill a void, he dies. And, I remember telling him, so that night I get a phone call from my mom, and I'm so, I hadn't been drinking, I was not drinking at the time, and she's like, you need to get to the hospital. That ain't good. Crap, and we get in there, and my sister makes it down, and my nieces and my brother-in-law and my mom and me, and the doctor comes in, and, she basically says he ain't good, and don't know, he's not good. And so they send us home, and they get him stabilized as much as they could. They basically, I think, put him in a sedated state, and we get back home and, mom's talking and she's like, what are we going to do, Because the doctor basically said he's not going to make it. We just don't know when, So we're sitting there at 11 o'clock. We get a phone call and y'all need to get back to the hospital. We'll let you see him because he's, near, And this was during COVID, fucking COVID, we get back up to the hospital and they make us put on these hazmat suits. This COVID thing it's a killer. It took like 45 minutes, to get us all suited up. And by the time we walked into the room, it was like you could hear it from the outside. You could hear the beep, 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 beep of the heart and then the flat line. And we walk in and it's like, yeah, this is all real, this is, my mom kisses my dad on the forehead, and had been married for 50 years, so there was, that was, that's what I knew what love was. They loved each other, and my mom just lost her partner. I said I wasn't going to do this. So my sister, says what she says, and leaves the room. And I'm the last one in there with my dad. And you're staring at a lifeless body. He is gone. And I don't know how, Dad. I'm happy to be here in the moment. And I promise you I will look after Mom. I promise you at some point I'm going to get sober and stay sober. But it ain't going to be now.
Yeah.
It ain't going to be now. And man, all I wanted to do, and my mom begged me, please don't drink. Please don't drink. And I didn't. I didn't drink for a while. But when I did, I made it a point. I said, I'm going to drink every damn day, and I don't care what the consequences are. I'm hurting, I'm upset. This world sucks. It's not going my way. I don't care. The fuck it's truly came about, I don't care what work. You can't do nothing to me, that my insides weren't already doing, So the relationship that I had going, it left, and then I was really, truly alone because my mom didn't want, a drinking Pat is not a fun Pat, and I would call her at the most inopportune, she does not want to talk to me, and this goes on for months and months and months and months and months. We buried my dad in November, and it was, she asked me to, lead the service and everything as a graveside and everything. And I'm like, man, I don't even know what to say, and I didn't do my dad justice, and I hate that. And, I made my amends on that, me and him. But I remember driving home from the service, driving home from the graveyard, my mom, about Ball Knob from, we were at Pleasant Plains, which is about halfway from Batesville to Ball Knob. About the Ball Knob area, which is about 50 miles, she starts in. She said, Pat, I know you're drinking again. What would your father think? I don't care, Mom. I don't care. Dad ain't here. Dad's not here, and he hasn't been here. I am hurting. I know I got a problem, Mom, but, it's my problem. You ain't got to worry about it. I'll figure it out. And we didn't talk for a good portion of that ride, and we really didn't discuss much after that. She kind of let me go into this deep, dark place she knew I was going, And I think she had to back off. I think she had to pull herself back, and I did, man. I drank and I drank and I drank and I drank, and nobody was coming around, and I didn't care what work was doing. When it just got to the point where I couldn't ever fill that hole, man. I couldn't ever make that pain go away on a number of fronts, not just my dad, but just the whole life up to that point. It was just a epic failure of what I thought. I was just a fucking failure. And I remember September 11th, Arkansas was playing Texas, September 11th of 2021. I drank, I got invited to a party, and I don't remember how I got there. I don't remember what I did at the party. I remember drinking a lot and getting home and drinking some more and drinking some more. And the next morning I get phone calls telling me what I did, how I got home and this and that and whatever, September 12th. And that Sunday, man, I'm sitting there and I go through them stages of drunkenness. I get drunk by 10 a.m., take a nap, get back up, drink some more, take a nap, and get back up for the third time. And I'm like, I can't quit drinking. I can't. I want to, but man, this beer, I can't put it down. I cannot put this thing down. And something flashed, my aha moment is like, Pat, your life is never going to get any better. And in fact, it's probably going to get worse. And I'm like, what could be worse than this? What could be worse than this? And I knew what the answer was. So I made the wrong decision. I called my mom, the person that don't want to talk to me when I'm drunk. She picked up the phone, and in my drunken stupor, I said, Mom, I know I have a problem and I need help. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what it looks like, but I know I need to tell my bosses, and I don't care if I get fired, because I am hurting right now, and I don't, I just don't know. I'm tired of this. And she was like, well, you know what you got to do. And I did. Monday morning I had to wake up, and man, I was hurt, and God, my head hurt for the first time in a long time. And we had a Monday morning meeting every Monday, and I was a part of that. And I always, man, if I can just get through this Monday morning meeting, I'm good. The rest of the week is good. They're not going to bug me, And there was thoughts, man, I don't have to, I was just, I'm crazy, I was just drunk, whatever, get done with the Monday morning meeting and how the office was set up. I walked back to my office, had to get my keys to my truck, and you can go left and you can go right. And left was the way I always went, but I went right. I walked back into my boss's office. I said, I don't know what this looks like, but I need help. And if it costs me my job, I don't care. Don't care. Y'all have known for a while that, I've got problems. It's been a roller coaster, and I apologize for putting you through this, but I need help, and I don't know what that looks like. But I figure it's going to mean some time away from here. And I'm sorry, but, once I figure it out, I'll let you know what's going on, when they were like, this is the third time in 4 years, this is your last chance. You ain't got no more. I'm like, well, that's good motivation, looking back at it. So, man, I didn't know what I was going to do. I called Serenity Park, and I was like, man, I don't want to go to Little Rock. I don't want to stay in Little Rock. I called a broker. They have these treatment brokers, and he said, well, your insurance, you can go to St. Louis or you can go to Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm like, man, Lafayette, Louisiana sounds more like my territory, So this was on a Monday. I called my boss, said, hey, this is where I'll be. It's a 35-day program. Then I'm going to do an outpatient program for however long. And he's like, go. Don't worry about this place, Go down there on that Wednesday, get there, and I'm, second thoughts. Like, we pull up, and it's an old grocery store that they've converted into a treatment center. And from the outside, it's like, what in the world did I get myself into? Why? And Mom's like, I'm not going to force you to go in, but
Your mom took you?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Mom's been with me,
Wow.
this journey.
I had a visual of a bus ticket.
No. Mom and my aunt, they drove me down, because it was hard on Mom, I didn't ever consider that. I didn't ever consider her feelings, she's having to take her son,
Yeah.
Anyways, we get there, and man, my blood pressure and everything's just screwed. I'm going through the DT, whatever you want to call it. I'm going through the shit, because I didn't go drunk, and it's the first day I didn't drink in a long time. Stupid. They were like, you should have come drinking, We told you. I was like, I didn't want to drink no more. I hadn't drank in 3 days. I don't want,
Wow.
I'm done with drinking,
God bless
That's why
you.
I'm here. And, Mom says, do your best or something like that. And I'm like, what does that mean? And, the minute she leaves, man, they give me some pills, and I don't remember the next 3 days. I don't remember anything.
What are they, like detox pills or something? Or I don't know how that process works.
Sure.
Probably Ativan.
Yeah, it was Ativan.
And that stuff it is very effective at detoxing, because I was on the same thing. I made the same mistake.
Yep.
I showed up and they're like, you should have drank today.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Ativan, it will erase your memory for about 3 days.
Yep.
Like, you'll have little flashes. It's like being in a drunk blackout.
Oh.
When you come to, you are as sober as a preacher.
Yeah. And it truly. So 3 days later, I'm like, what day is it? And they're like, it's Saturday. I'm like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Damn, I was out for a long time. Yeah, you were. You needed it, And so that Monday, I started group therapy, and had our psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever. They had certified, master degree level psychologist, psychiatrist that were the counselors or whatever. And she said, Pat, what do you want out of this? I don't know. I really don't, man. Drinking has been the, and I always looked at it as, I do things, in excess. And sometimes they work out for me and sometimes they don't. So, help me get to a middle, again, I know life is bad when I'm drinking, but, I don't know what that looks like for the rest of my life, So, she said, well, we can explore all those avenues, what it looks like and what it doesn't, and what it entails and what it doesn't entail, and all this and that. And I probably wasn't the best, person at that point. I was pretty pissed off. Like, what the fuck did I get myself into? And I was down there, and, it always goes around. What are you in for? What are you in?
Yeah,
for?
what are you in for? Right. What did you do?
What'd you do? To get yourself here? And I was the only one. I said I drank a lot of beer, and they laughed at me. And they're like, "That's water down here." These are Cajun, Louisiana.
Oh yeah.
People. They're like, "You're here because you drink beer." I was like, yeah, but I drank a lot, trying to make myself feel better. I drank a lot of beer, boys, girls, and they weren't impressed. They were not impressed, Of course, they all had their addictions, and I guess they were, a lot tougher than mine. Anyways, it took me to about the 15th day to realize, and speaking with the counselor, she said, and I've heard it since, and I didn't understand it at that point. And she said, Pat, nothing changes if nothing changes,
Yeah.
Fuck are you talking about? Nothing changes if it, okay, cool. And she was like, we started they would have guys from a certain program come in and, you could get a temporary sponsor and this and that. And I'm like, okay, I'll do this hocus pocus. I've already done AA and it ain't going to work, whatever. But, in talking with the temporary sponsor and talking with her, she finally made me realize, I could always admit step one, the first part of it. It's a two-parter.
That's right.
It's a two-parter. I'm powerless over alcohol. I got that. Yeah. When I drink, it consumes me, but the unmanageability part, I didn't understand that. And she kind of laid it out like this. She said, Pat, look where you're at. Look where you're at. And you don't think your life is unmanageable? And I was like, well, damn, just it slapped me right in my face. You are correct.
Yeah.
Nothing changes if nothing changes, Pat. So do you want to continue this cycle or worse? I'm like, man, I remember what my feelings were on September 12th. I remember getting that aha moment of my life is not going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse. And so, I've become this perfect little treatment center guy. I'm folding towels and, I'm doing for others. I'm doing the program without even doing the program, And my last week I was the head treatment guy, the head, resident. I got to pick what we talked about at the meetings, and
Back in boot camp, you were the guy on bear.
Yeah, I was, boy, but I was back in control where I wanted to be. Per se, I've always had that control issue. So a note that I always forget about is before I left work. On that Monday, my boss handed me a card with a guy's name on it. And he said, call this guy. He's been a friend for years and years and years, and I think he can help you. Now, he never told me about this guy before, never knew anything about him, But this time, I guess he felt maybe, hey, maybe it's time that he can help Pat, Boss always looked out for me. I had two great bosses that I think genuinely cared about me. This guy, I called him and he said, there's a meeting in this particular town you should come to, and we can talk. He said, get here before, and we'll talk about things. And so I did. For some reason, I've listened to somebody else, and he said, after the meeting, I didn't listen to the meeting. I'm still in this daze of, oh crap, here we go. And after the meeting, he said, I know what your plan is. Do your plan, and come back. We'll be here. Come back. We'll be here. And
this is before you went to Louisiana?
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. I'm tracking.
Again, I jump around.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Hopefully people are keeping up.
No, that's good.
I'll screw you here in a minute and go way back, but not right now. So I do my 35 days, and the day I get out, the counselor, we developed a pretty good relationship, and she is like, Pat, I wish you luck. The odds are against you, but I wish you luck. And
wow, thanks.
Thanks, man. But I understand, I understand. They have to be like that.
Okay.
I'd rather take it that way than, them bullshit me.
Well,
This is going to be fun. This is going to be easy.
You got it made now.
Yeah,
you're done.
Yeah.
You're going to save the world now. Yeah.
So,
hey, Pat, would you think that this might be a good stopping point for a
sure,
moment?
we can stop.
All right. Hey, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. True confession, man. My over 60 bladder was kicking in, so thanks for your patience. Of course, I always do that, but the audience they don't know the difference. If I hadn't said anything, they wouldn't even know, would they? Anyway, so Pat, you're back. You're living the dream.
Not just yet. Not just yet, Bob. So, where were we?
Your counselor just giving you the great news.
Yeah, so I get out, and the day that I get out, it happened to be a day that meeting that I went to on the Monday before I left was meeting. And I was like, Mom, I'd like to get to that meeting. They say for this thing to work, you got to get to a meeting pretty quick, and for some reason, let's try this thing. What's the worst that can happen, so I get to the meeting and I get with the guy, and they're happy. He's happy to see me. Like, all right, well, what's your plan? I'm like, man, I'm taking this very slow. When's the meetings? Are Mondays and Thursdays? Cool, I can do Mondays and Thursdays. I'm also doing a outpatient every day. I've talked to my boss, and they're like, we don't want you back until you're absolutely ready to come back. And I felt like that was probably the wisest decision at that point, because beforehand I tried to go back early. I'm like, I need to get back to work because work is missing me. And I figured out, things keep on going without Pat, and I need to focus on Pat. So I was getting all this recovery stuff, all day, every day, and from that meeting, I got introduced to another meeting in another town, and I started going to that meeting on Tuesdays, so now I'm going Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, but I was still the guy in the meeting sitting in the back. And, when you called on me, I don't, everybody in this room knows Pat don't like to talk. So while we're still going after 2.5 hours, I don't know, but bear with me, boys, so I still had some, things seemingly are going okay, but I'm in, I'm 60 days into this thing, and I get about 90 days into it. I kind of thought about this the other day. And I'm like, I can go left and I can go right, and I know what left is gonna where it's going to take me, and I hadn't been down right, so let's go down right. And what right was, man, I begged and pleaded with God one night. I said, God, if you want me to do this thing, I need some guys. I need some gentlemen to show me how to do this thing. I need some guys to walk with me that like sports. I laid it all out to them, man. I need this. I need some guys, and man, he has blessed me with more guys than I can put up with, but. So this was about the 90-day mark, and I'm going to more meetings. I'm finding there's some people that I'm actually connecting with, not necessarily in outside the meeting, but in the meeting. And I think that's where it starts. You meet them in the meeting, and anyways, it's a cold. I want to say November, December, January time frame. I don't know when, but the 90-day mark for me was September, October, November, December-ish. And I'm at a meeting, original meeting that I was going to, and there's these two guys that are, I don't know if they're new or not, but I'd never seen them before. And, I don't remember if they said anything in the meeting or whatever, but we have this deal that's the meeting after the meeting, and one of these guys, me and him, was sitting outside. We're just bullshitting back and forth, and you know, he's like, "Where are you from?" Like, I live in Sherwood, you know, and so where at in Sherwood? I live in Sherwood, and I told him, you know, where I live now, but you know, the conversation kind of went, you know, this is where I lived before, and he was like, "Well, I live in that area," you know, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well." I lived on this road. I live on that road, you know. Well, this was my house. I live in that house.
That's crazy.
You know? And,
that is crazy.
You know, coincidences, I think not.
No.
You know, I've come to learn that, you know, things happen for a reason. They absolutely happen for a reason. And me meeting them two guys that night has changed this journey, you know, 100%. You know, God answered my prayers that night. And I tell the guys all the time, you know, thank you, you know, and of course they're pretty humble and, you know. Anyway, so I meet these guys and, you know, he's like, well, we're going to watch a movie on a Friday night, you know, and we start this deal, and I'm like, well, I have absolutely nothing better to do on a Friday night, so I'm going to go start watching movies with these guys that I have no clue who they are, you know, other than the fact that one of the guys is living in the house I grew up in, you know, and, you know, that leads into all this other stuff, you know, but I truly think it was God's plan, you know.
Warriors.
So yes, we had the Warriors night, and we won't go into that. But
Oh no, I want to hear.
oh, here we go.
Come out to play.
So the first
Just
couple,
like a Barbie tea party? Or, I mean, what
yeah,
are we talking
yeah.
about here?
So we're popping popcorn, we're drinking Dr. Pepper like it's going out of style.
That's
you know.
right. That's right.
But on Friday nights, if we wasn't going to a meeting, and I think we started going to cabinet meeting pretty regularly.
That's right.
Anyways, we the first couple movies we watched, you know, action packed, you know, this and that, and then one of the guys was like, "Man, I've got this movie. It's called The Warriors." And it's one of the worst cinematic experiences, you know, but we've got that, you know, if we don't have anything else, we got The Warriors, you know, and it's a running joke at this point, and it's a good joke, because it takes me back to a time, you know, I still didn't have a lot of things figured out, but these guys allowed me into their little circle at that point, and they allowed me to be me, you know. And what they did was they opened up my eyes to what this program could be, you know. So we're continuing on, and throughout the next couple months, you know, I'm still not sold 100% on this program. You know, they say I need to get a sponsor, and man, you know, I'm doing good. Why do I need a sponsor? You know, but I've also been introduced to several other guys, and guys that have a lot of sobriety, and man, listening to them, it's like, okay, you know, this is a guy I can look at, and he's been doing it for X number of years, almost as old as I am, you know, and he seems reasonably happy, and he did it this way. Well, maybe I need to consider this. And, you know, I had one of those moments where, again, man, fork in the road, I can go left or I can go right. And I finally broke down, and on a Wednesday night, I asked the guy to be my sponsor, you know, and funny story about that is the first thing he said was no. And I'm like, well, screw this, you know, screw this. You know, the first person I asked, he said no. Yeah, I'm done with this one, you know. And I didn't want, you know, the other guys that I was hanging around, we developed a friendship, so to say. And I was like, I don't want to run that friendship with them being my sponsor, you know. At that point, I didn't feel like that was, I needed some friends at that point, and, you know, maybe later on down the road if that leads to something else, but I didn't want them to be my sponsor. So I went outside the little group that we were in at that point. And so I asked the guy on a Wednesday night, and he says no. Well, Thursday morning, first thing in the morning, the guy gives me a call, and he said, Pat, I apologize. He said, at that point on a Wednesday night, I was somewhere, you know, my head was somewhere else. If you want me to sponsor you, I will. And I was like,
no.
Dang it. You know, like, okay, I guess we're really going to do this thing. What do I need to do first? And, you know, of course, the first thing, read the doctor's opinion, you know. Read the doctor's opinion, and we'll discuss it, you know, a couple days later, you know. And I'm sitting there reading the doctor's opinion. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see myself in that. You know, anyways, you know, he allowed me to ask questions, and he allowed me to be me while also showing me what the program is, you know, and walking me through the steps. And all along with walking through the steps, I'm also hanging around these guys, and we're just doing things that I normally wouldn't do. You know, Pat's getting outside of himself, and they're always encouraging me, and they're always, you know, they're showing up, you know, and that, you know, just a few months earlier, I didn't have anybody, you know, and I remember that, you know, that plays in my head. And, you know, we get into the next year, and I get the steps worked. And, you know, the first time I was asked to tell my story, and man, I'm going to give them the best story I can ever give, you know, and I didn't realize how quickly an hour goes. I mean, you can't tell your whole story in an hour. So I'm trying to give them the great highlights of Pat, you know, trying to show everybody I am a drunk, you know, I'm trying to make them see, you know, I am a drunk, you know, and it's like, yeah, we knew that, you know, your first story, cool, you know, but I always wanted to play up, you know, and I found, you know, my story is not any different than anybody else. You know, alcohol just stopped working for what I wanted it to work for. Yeah. And then it turned bad. So we're doing this journey, and, you know, I'm getting to experience some things that I hadn't experienced, you know, in a while. I'm laughing. I'm not worrying about, you know, the things going on at work. I'm not, you know, outside influences are not, you know, they're not around. And I'm like, man, you know, there's something to this. And one of the guys, I think one of the guys asked me one night, he said, I've been on this committee for several years now, and I think it's time to turn it over. And he's like, Pat, you know, I'd like you to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what this, you know, this entails, you know. And it was the corrections committee, and that gave me something to do. It gave me some ownership of this program, you know. And I got into service work, and from early on, man, my sponsor was all about service work. You know, if it's the simplest thing of, you know, Saturdays, we used to mop the meeting area. You know, we mopped it. You know, we're not above anything.
That's right.
We make the coffee. We, you know, bring the donuts. You know, everything service related. What can you do for somebody else, and not ask for anything else? You know, not have the expectations is what I'm trying to say. And, man, all this time, you know, things are going really, you know, better than I guess I thought they would, you know. We ended up going on a trip, and I think, our first trip was to Dr. Bob's.
Yeah.
Bob's. And I'm traveling with these guys that I don't really know. I mean, we know each other, but we don't really know, but we have a great time. And we experienced some things that, again, that I wouldn't have ever fathomed that I'd experience, and this gets back to the fact of, man, if you just say yes and, you're willing, what can happen? What can happen? Who knows,
That's right.
but, you might miss the miracle if you don't participate. So, throughout this journey, I've got to experience all these different things, and I try to bring something to the table, that I felt like, years before, man, I didn't bring anything to the table, I try to, think of others before I think of myself. All these things that I've learned in this program that ultimately I think has led to being rewarded, not necessarily. When we first started talking, I said, I think I was rewarded with a new job, a new opportunity. But that's not what I want to convey. What I want to convey is, I get an opportunity to do life on life's terms and maybe give that one person that needs that little bit of hope. Because I needed it, I didn't know how I was going to get it. But, again, you keep on saying yes, and you keep on showing up, and you keep on doing the next right thing and this and that, hope comes, and then gratitude comes, and, all these different things that years and years before I didn't have, I didn't have. So we've done the trips together. We fellowship. We try to live our lives the way we should have been living all along. And not again fuzzy bunnies and rainbows. That's not what we're preaching. Because it's a struggle on a daily basis. I have a. There are some tough days, but today I've got guys that I can call, and I've got a program that's given me the tools that I use to live that one day at a time, and I look, I am, if you would have told me 5 years ago that my life would be where it's at, I would have told you, you're smoking crack or something, whatever your disease was, I'd tell you were doing that because, again, I didn't have no hope at that time, but I've done things that I could have never fathomed, and, I will talk about, I was in my job for 13 years, and it was something that I prayed about, and I prayed about, and I prayed about, and I never, it was it's one of the toughest things I've ever had to do because I left two guys that, rode the roller coaster with Pat and saw me through, where I kind of got on stable ground, and they kept on encouraging me. And yeah, I was conflicted because I knew it was time. I knew I'd served my time. And what I say, that I think it was a God thing is everything fell in place. And the morning of the interview, the last interview that I did, I felt a connection with God and my Father. I was going to his stomping grounds, and I knew, man, something is right about this. Yeah. And I never would, I look back and I never would have had those opportunities if I wouldn't have gone right.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Man, I'm blessed, I'm blessed by all y'all. Life, continues to get better, it continues to get better. So that's what I got, Bob.
Thanks, Pat. You said earlier something about coincidences. I think not. 2012, I moved here and I got a lead on a house, and I went and talked to the couple, and I spent quality time with the man of the house. And I mean, real quality time. He pointed. There was a newspaper flag up on the wall, and he said, "Yeah, my son was a Marine." And we just got to talk, and I didn't look at another single house. I didn't. That was it. And he made me a crazy offer, and I'd have been a fool not to take it, even though the back of my mind was like, you don't make deals like this, dude. You go out and you shop around. You make sure, but it's like everything just felt right. I was like, well, I'm gonna go with it. And I developed a friendship with your parents. Your dad and I had already moved the furniture out, so we would sit on the floor in his office in that house. And like he said, of course I didn't know that there was problems with their baby boy. He's not going to tell me that. What he did tell me was he had a son that was a Marine. He was very proud of that. And then when we were talking about the narrowing it down that I was actually living in the house that you grew up in, the giveaway was you said the secret room. And I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Your sister I know it was your sister because you certainly didn't draw little boy or little girls with dresses on the wall.
I would hope not.
But I did. I did find a little Mattel vehicle that I knew was not your sister's. And we actually gave that to you on one of the episodes here. I think, yeah. But then again, with the coincidences, Tony out of the blue was like, hey, man, we need to go to a different meeting because he and I were hanging out together. And I was like, well, where do you want to go? And he mentioned the town. I was like, whatever. And we drove up there. Of course, Tony's a smart man. He doesn't smoke. And it was cold.
It was cold.
You and I were the only fools out there smoking. And that's when we had that chat. And I was already going to Ralph's house when we do the Sunday get-togethers, had chatted with you about, we're doing a meeting at your house. What do you say we, do something at the other house where Sloan lived. And then that little group started with the men sitting here today, minus Sloan, and has gotten to be, I don't know how many guys are in that group now. I mean, it's just grown, and of course we finally call it the tribe, and we didn't make that up. That comes out of the big book. But, so in fact, Jeremy, because of the meeting at Ralph's house, I met you. And then you all met on a service committee. You talked about a sponsor earlier, and I know on a previous episode we had talked about how you told me that Jeremy was your service sponsor. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah.
And then you guys explained it to me, and I thought, well, that's Arkansas has got it going on, and so, it's just amazing.
It's just another tool,
It's a great tool.
It's a great tool, Just another guy that I can look at and say, hey, man, I want what he has.
Yeah.
And follow that path,
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. And just, and then, of course, this whole thing was born out of just a conversation. We're not getting to that here, but, Redbeard and I used to work together years and years and years ago. And, I was talking to him about this, and you having a background in producing podcasts, you were like, well, let's do it. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how to spell podcast. You're like, I'll take care of this. And you were the brains, I was the mouth. And then the launch night when we're going to go ahead and do this. That's it. That's how we started. And it's just think that 83 episodes later, here we are, man. We've gone on trips to New York, where Tony insisted that I pick the hotel rooms. And
thanks, Tony.
Yeah, we won't let Bob do that again. But then our trip to Dr. Bob's place, I remember the Burger King parking lot like it was yesterday. We won't go there either. But it's just good times, man. It's just this program has bought. I mean, there's 6 men in here right now. Can I count? Yeah, 6 men in here that have walked the walk, gone through their trials. And now here we are today, able to strengthen each other through some serious ups and downs. Everybody in here has gone through some stuff, every single person. And we just come together, you know, and it's I'm not trying to be weird about this, but it's a beautiful thing, man, to know that you got friends, you know, that are really, truly there, you know. So we're moving into wrap up. Jeremy, Redbeard, Ralph, Tony, you got anything you want to say?
Go ahead, Ralph.
I just want to say, Pat, it's a pleasure to see you grow.
You do got to get closer to the mic. Sorry, Ralph.
I'll start over. I got to say it twice. No, Pat, it's been a pleasure to see you grow. And, you know, that's the thing about this thing. That's the miracle, seeing somebody come in and their lives change. Yeah. Just one day at a time, just things to get a little bit better. It's been a pleasure. I've been to more Razorback events than I've ever been.
Yeah, and we're going to more. Win, lose, or draw.
That's right.
Thank you, Ralph.
That's right.
Absolutely. I want to say a couple of things. It's crazy. You know, I met Pat for the first time at Ralph's house on a Sunday morning as well. And somebody said, you know, Pat was a Marine too. And we chatted just a little bit, but then that relationship has just grown and blossomed over the years. But, you know, there's a couple of things about Pat that stick out in my mind. One, I think he might be sick tonight because this is maybe the first time I've ever seen him without his Razorback hat on. So,
you know, that's a good point.
The second one is, you know, that Ralph just referenced Razorback events, and I can get into some very dark places. I told myself I wasn't going to do this tonight either. You talked about September. The first part of the year for me is always really hard. March, and we've talked about some of why that is. And this past March was no exception. And I needed to get out of Arkansas in a bad, bad way. And I called Pat from St. Louis, and I said, the Razorbacks are playing in Portland, let's go. And it was expensive as all hell. And he and I got on an airplane, and that trip very well could have saved my life because at that particular point in time, I just wanted to die. And so thank you. Pat is a great man today, and the person that you heard about earlier in that story, that's not the man he is today. He loves Alcoholics Anonymous. He loves his family, and better than that, he's just a great friend, and I love you.
And that's, you know, you don't know what you're going to do for a person. You know, you just say yes. You know, when he called, I was like, damn, going to Portland. All right. Never dreamed of going to Portland, you know. But as it all progressed, you know, there was something that said, yeah, you need to go, you know, and it's just being able to be there for somebody else. You know, that's what we're called to do today. And again, I've been blessed by so many that I feel like it's necessary for me. You know, if it's in my means and it's a trip or it's a call in the middle of the night or it's, you know, going to eat with somebody, whatever the hell it is, you know, I've got to make time for others because others made time for me, you know?
Yeah.
So, and we got to see the Razorbacks, which
they won both games.
They won both games, and we don't get many wins. We don't get many wins. So anytime you can go and see 2 wins, I mean, shit, that just makes the trip right there, you know. So
I recall you getting on a plane and you and Tony driving every 10 minutes to get air in your tire or something like that. Is that about right?
About every 90 miles.
90 miles. That was a good one.
From Tampa to.
Good night. From Tampa to here. Good night. And then, of course, if you hadn't have gone with me on that competition to Indiana, I don't know how I would have got home.
I carried you the last 3 miles or so, didn't I?
You did carry me.
I carried you.
It was everything that could go wrong with me went wrong, and I wouldn't quit.
No.
You know, I was
you showed me something, Bob. I was like, hell yeah, love it. You know, and then you endured. You know, here's the blessing of the of that trip. You know, you endured. You know, after all that, and I give you mad props, Bob. You know, I didn't know if you were going to make it or not. You know, but that drive. You know, there's something in us that we're not going to quit.
That's right.
We're not going to quit.
I will die before I
quit. You endured a 4-hour trip to South Bend, Indiana. I mean, I know that must have just sucked.
It hurt.
And I was just as giddy as I could be. I get to see Notre Dame, you know.
There was no way that I was not going to let that happen because you drove that trip, and I was fine with it on the way to the competition. Hey, we'll do this little thing. I do it every year, and then we'll go to Notre Dame, and you know, I couldn't care less about those little dwarves or whatever they are. You know, it's not my jam. Well, when you had to carry me I came across the line with my rucksack, and my back went out. My left leg started spasming real bad, and my knee blew out. And all this happened on the trail, but I just refused to quit. When I came across that line, Pat had to catch me, and the rest of my trip up until, in fact, I remember I went to have a follow-up with my doctor, and Jeremy, you walked in, you were like, what's up? And I'm like, I'm broke, bro. I'm broke. The point is that was as much pain as I was in. My joy as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous was watching your happiness at that campus. It didn't matter how much pain I was in. It didn't matter. You had to carry me all over the place like your damn dad. You know, it's just, you know, because I'm an old man. Just watching your excitement going through the gift shop, and we meandered all over the campus. I get to do that stuff today too. You know, it's not all about me anymore. It is about a tribe, and we do stuff for each other, man. And it's just it's a beautiful life, bro. I wouldn't trade this. My sponsor, he says this whenever we're together. He goes, "This is the best I ever lived," and I'm like, "It is. It is the best I ever lived." I know I got some rough days coming. I'm still alive, but I know that I'm not alone today. And I would say, you know, as I turn the mic over to you for your closing words to the audience, I am not alone today, and I don't want anybody to ever feel alone. I actually care about people today. And Pat, I'm preaching to the choir, because there's not a person in this room that you wouldn't do something for if you haven't done it already. So anyway, I'm done yapping. I'll bring the close out. But Pat, you get the closing words, man, whatever you want to say to the audience. Boom.
Well, you know, guys, thank you for being here. You know, I told Bob I didn't need an audience, you know, but the gentlemen in this room mean a whole hell of a lot to me. You know, you don't know. You know, God, I was sitting in that meeting about that 2-year mark, and that girl, you know, she said, God will move mountains, but you better bring a shovel. Y'all have been my shovel, you know. So I ain't doing this again, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thank y'all. And you know, you're not alone. You're not alone.
That's right.
So Pat out.
All right, Pat. Thanks. Jeremy, you actually cut a trip short to come here and surprise us. So thanks for showing up, man. When you told me you were going to do that, I was like, I'm not going to say anything to Pat. I'll just let you roll in. So it's very cool of you to do that. Redbeard, you know, when I told him we were doing the gang was getting back together, he said, I will be there. And that was just very cool. Ralph, I didn't know you were coming. I sent the message out, and when you walked in, I was like, what's up? That's just very cool of you to be here. And of course, Tony called me and said, hey, I'm going to be there. And I was like, man, you guys, you're just freaking awesome. And Mark told me to give you a shout out, but for his own personal reasons that we are aware of, he couldn't make it. So, all right. We got to love us some Mark, man. And Danny, thanks for being here as always. It's our little mascot dog. Hey, folks, that's a wrap on today's show. You know, I hope you have some good feedback for us today. And if you do, leave it at shoutoutfromthepit.com. You know, remember, as Pat has so, I don't know, perfectly exampled for us. You know, if you want to feel good about yourself, go out and do something for someone else. You know, that is the magic. You're not alone, folks. And if no one's told you to love you today, we love you. God bless you. Have an outstanding American day. This is Bob the Old Rucker. Peace out.